It's the Indie Horror Junkie Podcast, your source for anything and everything indie horror. Here's your host, Otis B. Dreads. Right, it is 8 o'clock, almost. My clock says 7:59. I was trying to time it just right, but it is 8 o'clock nonetheless. Do you know where your indie horror's at? Do you, Rick?
Right here, brother.
Right here. All right. It is the Indie Horror Junkie Podcast. I'm Otis B. Dreads. We have Rotting Ricky D. I swear, every time I hear that, man, I just think of the 1980s DJs, like Rockin' Ricky D or something.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, we got a good show tonight. I got a feeling a lot of good conversations are going to come out. We have Mr. Ash Williams from
Here we
Evil
go.
Dead. I've been watching a lot of Evil Dead, so
yes.
Ash Hamilton, writer, director, producer. You may know him from his mockumentary film Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story, came out in 2021. We're going to talk a lot more about that here in just a few minutes. And of course, before we get into, because we got some pretty big news that I think you want to share with us, but hey, be sure to check out all the links down at the bottom, the Indie Horror Junkie podcast, the Facebook page, the Facebook group, the email is down there. And of course, most importantly, scrolling by right now, the .com, because hey, that's where you can get all the latest issues of the Indie Horror Junkie magazine. And hey, if you have any wants or hopes to maybe get in the magazine, get a project featured, that's where that little email comes into play. And hey, as long as you're horror, it doesn't matter. Movies, books, whatever, get in contact with us. And hey, we'll see what we can do. Maybe have you on the show, maybe get you featured in the magazine, all kinds of good stuff. And let me just get right to it, because you have done you were a part of a movie called The Clock, and that just premiered for the first time anywhere, right?
Well, technically, it premiered. We had a cast and crew premiere in Port Richey at the Cinema 6 Theater a couple of weeks prior, and I think it was August 27th. But then after it got done from there, we still had some tweaking we had to do for some scenes. We filmed an extra scene. We had a whole bunch of stuff. So then it was finally finalized, and it premiered at the Phantasm Orlando Film Festival this past weekend in its entirety. So technically, I guess it was the first finalized premiere, and it did really, really well. A lot of people came to us and told us they really enjoyed it, and then we found out that we won the Judge's Choice Award over there. There you go. Right. In the hands of Amy, who was attending, because I was here in California. So yeah, very cool little trophy, and that's just hopefully the beginning and the start of this the fun here. But the other thing too is, now that this is done, we're going to be seeking distribution, and I'm looking at some different strategies right now. I've got a couple distributors looking at it. There's a couple of streaming services out there, and that kind of segues us into our special guest here, as he has his own streaming channel.
It really does. Scareplex and the Scareplex streaming service. And yeah, I'm kind of anxious to talk to him about that. And plus, I want to talk to him about his past projects, his upcoming projects, all kinds of things. So, hey, I guess without further ado, here is the trailer for Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story. Are you ready for this, Rotting Ricky D?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
Now, I can see that you're sort of shaken right now. Was it hard for you to step foot on this property for this interview after what you've heard?
If you'd have heard the screams come over the phone, and if you'd have heard the fear, you wouldn't want to come out here. It don't feel right being here.
We need someone here immediately. There's a lot of people trying to get into my house.
Okay, well, how many people, ma'am?
I don't know. I don't know how many people. They're just, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Are they inside the house, ma'am?
No, we have people
Okay,
inside.
ma'am. I need you to stay on the line with me. I need you to tell
You
me
guys,
what's going on.
where is Sean?
I've been looking outside. I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
We haven't seen him. We thought he might have been outside. I can see.
There are people outside.
Fred, anything? No, I haven't. Listen, it's your fault.
What?
Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line with me. Tell me what's going on.
Okay. I don't know. When I look out the window, there's just light. There's light.
Well, it ain't coming soon. It's already here. Welcome, Ash, to the Indie Horror Junkie podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And no problem. This, you're that particular film right there. It took me a couple times of watching it. I mean, it wasn't like it was, I just had questions that I didn't get answered, the first time. So I'd go back, but very, very well done.
Thank you.
Again, we got so much to, discuss, and I want to jump right in before we get into your projects or your movie projects. We're both itching to know all we can know about Scareplex streaming service and, where to find that. I have I can tell everyone where to find it, and then you can go to scareplex.com, horror -fix.com, and but tell us all about this, man.
So strangely, and by the way, congratulations on the clock. That's great to hear that.
Thank you, Brent.
Making any film is a huge endeavor. And just remember, out of 100 filmmakers trying to make a movie, only one actually ends up doing it. So that's a fantastic accomplishment, and you should be very, very proud. And that's kind of also the genesis behind Scareplex. Was I was a writer. I've always done a lot of AV work, mainly in the corporate sphere. My past is a lot of corporate culture videos. Yeah, believe me, this does get more interesting, believe it or not. But however, I was a lot of corporate culture videos, a lot of Q&A stuff in higher education, a lot of commercial work, actually shooting sports, did a barista with ESPN, some other networks like that. So a lot of my background actually is not in narrative storytelling, but I'm a huge horror fan. And more of my first forays into trying to be a filmmaker were more in writing. So we ended up making a movie, Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story, and did really well. We did really well on the festival circuit, and we had several distributors sort of, competing for the film, and going through a lot of the pains of going through distribution. We realized that that the model's broken. Like, that was the first thing that we sort of realized, was that the model is broken. When we go back years and years, and years for me, I'm an old guy. So we go back years and years, and we look at the Blockbuster model. The Blockbuster model, strangely, actually worked better for independent filmmakers than the current model did, because we were selling physical product. Mm-hmm. So if you were lucky enough to make a movie, especially a horror film, in the Blockbuster era, that model could be quite lucrative for you. You could make quite a bit of money.
We saw a lot of that in the 80s. There was a big boom in the early 80s where, that seemed there was so many horror films, low budget horror films coming out in the 80s, and they went right to a lot of mom and pop video stores. They went to a lot of the bigger chain video stores. I remember that.
And as a guy who worked in video stores, that was largely how I got through college, was working through video stores, was you saw sort of behind the scenes. You broke down that fourth wall of what the actual merchandise was, the leasing agreements to be able to rent, and a lot of the physical media that was purchased by Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, the smaller mom and pop chains were purchased sometimes upwards of $89, $99, $129 even for VHS and DVD. So they sort of built the model based on you pay more money for each copy, but you're probably going to get back in your first couple weekends, depending on the numbers, that you buy. Mm-hmm. So you pay that $120 for it, but yet you've got $5 rentals, that rents 20 times and you're good. Yeah. And that model worked for the mom and pop places because they actually got their money back pretty easily, especially for horror films. Horror films, even though it's sort of been the redheaded stepchild of Hollywood, mind you, has always been a ratio of little in, lot out. Mm-hmm. And Hollywood's taken advantage of that for forever. Right. And video proved just again how lucrative that was with the Blockbuster model. And then what happened with the Blockbuster model, distribution was still relatively the same. You were getting about 50%. So that 50%, however, translated after the distribution company paid for the physical product, after there was probably a minimum purchase guarantee there, you started to get 50% off of physical sales. And that wasn't bad. There were times where you can find, let's say, a town of a population with about 100,000, 200,000 people might have up to 6 Blockbusters. And that's just the big chain. They probably have a couple Hollywood Videos, and they might have a matter of mom and pops. So if you have a small movie, and it didn't, and of course, in the direct-to-video era, it didn't matter what it was shot on. You could shoot it on anything, but in direct-to-video because we weren't worried about 4K, we weren't worried about resolution. We were really just worried. It was, especially during the boom, it was just product, right? Mm-hmm. So you could shoot on anything, find a distributor, put it out there, and you would start getting that big chunk off of physical sales. So if you've got 10 copies, which was still relatively low for a new movie at a Blockbuster, and let's say even 5 copies, but you've got 6 Blockbusters in town, right? At $120 or even $100 a copy with 10 copies per store, that amounts to a lot of physical sales. And that's not even, mass market sale through. You don't even look at that yet. That's just rental. So a lot of filmmakers were making very small movies and making hundreds of thousands of dollars back. Yeah. It was enough for them to put money into more movies. It was enough for them to build product, build it up, have something that was bigger. They could scale it up because they were getting paid. So that model actually worked really well. And then streaming came along and just fucked us proper.
Changed everything.
Oh my God, it changed everything. Yeah.
And it changed it for the absolute worst. So let's take that the physical media model, right? Let's take the Blockbuster model, and then let's translate it into what happens today. So what happens today is you make a movie. Now, horror films, if you look at Indiegogo, you look at Kickstarter, you look at GoFundMe, a lot of very, very small films are made in that about $8,000 to $15,000 range. A lot of really small horror films, that's sort of the sweet spot. Right around $10,000 is the sweet spot. It's enough to make a slasher film. It's enough to make a film with some tits. It's enough to make something that brings people in. Mm-hmm. And you can do that on a relatively small budget of $8,000, $10,000. So you spend your $10,000, and as an independent director, independent filmmaker, creator, you're spending all of it. It doesn't mean that you have a budget and then you have slush. You're spending every single dollar. So that $10,000 usually does not include marketing. Usually just includes the physical production. Sometimes doesn't even include post-production, because everyone knows we get into post-production, that's a completely different monster. Mm-hmm. So we think we've got a $10,000 movie. We make it. We complete it. And at that point, we've paid everybody. So right now we're just flat. We've flatlined. We're at complete zero. But we've maybe done a few festivals. We've drummed up a little bit of good publicity for it. There's some anticipation for the release, and we start looking at distributors. So the distribution model is still about 50 to 60%. You can hire a sales broker to try to get you better. It's probably still going to be around 50, 60%. Like that's just the median. It's what everyone expects. So there's not a lot of back and forth. There's not a real tug of war for pricing on distribution. It's pretty solid for the most part. And a lot of the filmmakers that I know, we all pretty much paid the same thing going into it. However, even that mimics the blockbuster model. Now, here's where this comes in, is when the distributor takes it to streaming networks. Now, you can do it yourself. It's a ton of work. It's an absolute ton of work to take it to streaming services yourself, because each one of them have different quality controls. So you can spend 2 months trying to make sure that your files are approved for Apple, and then for whatever reason, Amazon has an issue with it, or Plex has an issue with it, or Redbox, or whoever. They each have different quality controls. So what that distributor is going to do is it's going to at least try to help you through the ropes, or you would think they would let you know what you need to do, or you hire somebody to do your quality control for you. That means they're doing color correction. They're looking for warm pixels. They're looking for audio that might be a little bit off, audio that peaks. They're looking for a variety of different things. And you can pay that person, or else if you're absolutely out of your mind, shithouse rat crazy, like myself, you decide to do it all yourself because you're poor. You're poor because you just made a movie and you sunk everything into getting it made.
Right.
And then you went into debt because you also paid to have it at festivals. We would like to think that the festivals are very altruistic and that they just look at filmmakers and go, give us your film. We want to coddle it and cradle it. No, you got to pay to get into the festivals. Just the way it is. You're paying for everything. So you're paying for that on top of it. So more than likely, by the time you even hit your distributor, you're in debt. Because that flat line, once you flatten that curve, usually it starts taking a dip downward. And there's a lot of gravity to pull that dip down. So now you're in debt, and the distributor comes along and says, okay, we're going to help you with some of the quality controls, because that's a process. And also, we are probably in a better position to get you multiple platforms, because your product will come in as solicited, not non-solicited. So non-solicited is a bit of a different story. So since it's solicited, it's from an actual distributor, and usually it's a distributor that probably has some kind of relationship with the distribution company. So they'll look at you and they'll go, okay, here are our options. Sometimes they'll do what's called an MG, which is a minimum guarantee. And that's just money that they're going to put towards what they think is the least amount of product sold. So there's some leverage there so that no one loses out on money, because that's really the name of the game. Why they do what they do. The creators, usually we have some different alternative agendas, which is a little more emotional, a little more empathic. Distributors, sorry guys, not so much. If there are distributors watching, they're pretty much in it for the money. Even though I know some great people who work for distribution companies, it's still a model for money. So now you've got that. You're talking to your distributor, and you're like, okay, all right. So right off the bat that whatever you make, they're going to take 50%, if not more. Now, what people fail sometimes to realize is that the streaming platform also takes 50%. So let's say it goes to Amazon. Amazon, right just out of the starting gate, goes, if you're making $1, we're taking 2/4 from you. It almost sounds like an old racetrack con. It really does when you boil down to it. I almost think that I want to hear like a 1930s serial voiceover artist, like, we're gonna take 2/4 from you. Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of hard work you put into that, huh?
Yeah.
So they take your 2/4, and then you're left with 50 cents or whatever it is, depending on how they sell it. And then your distributor goes, good job, buddy. That's great. I'm so glad you made 50 cents. I'm just going to go ahead and take one of your quarters.
Let me get one of your quarters real quick. Yeah.
If you ended up getting a sales broker in there, which a lot of people do nowadays, because we've got this idea that the sales broker is going to really help us. We have this idea that this is a person that's going to come along and they're going to barter a better deal for us. They're in our corner. There's a good possibility that sales broker is going to take 20% off of what's remaining. So now you got that brand new shiny quarter, and it feels really good because you made that quarter all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody comes along and goes, just give me a nickel. Just a nickel. So you give them a nickel, and now you're rubbing two dimes together. And then a producer comes along and goes, hey, remember when you told me if I gave you $3,000 that you'd give me some money off the back end? So the reality, not the dream, but the reality of independent filmmaking is that most filmmakers, out of 100% of their revenue, will end up, and of course we have to factor taxes into this, which I didn't even go into because it's so fucking painful. Wow. So we have to factor, that you never really get 4 quarters anyways. You get closer to about, probably 65 cents, maybe, is what you end up getting. So we've got our 65 cents and we subtract it from there. And that's sort of the math game as far as that goes. I don't know if I froze up on you guys on my video or not.
Yeah, it looks like you did.
You did, yeah, but you still sound good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. I just love the fact that it looks like I'm flating my mic. Like, this is out of all the screenshots in the world, this is the one I get. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So you're left with very little. And what it ends up amounting to is that you're left with sometimes anywhere from like 8 to 12% is what you're left with. Now, on a $10,000 movie, a lot of those movies have a regular lifespan of about, I would say about $50,000. And that's pretty good. So that $50,000 will end up coming to about 42 after taxes, sometimes less, maybe 38, depending. And then out of that 38, Amazon's going to take 19. They're going to take 19.5. Then your distributor is going to take 9,750. And then your sales rep, out of that is going to take, their 20%. So now you're left with about 6,800, $7,000. And then you've got to pay your producers back. So for your $10,000 movie that made $50,000, you're probably going to see about 4,800.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a real kick in the teeth.
Now you're in the red.
Yeah.
And how do you make another movie if you and that's why so many people actually strive to hit break even. A lot of people strive to hit break even. So independent filmmaking is not easy from a workload standpoint. It's not easy from a I would say a career life juggling standpoint. It's not easy on any level, and that's what you got to look forward to, is you basically you look forward to other entities coming along and taking all your money at the end of the day too. So we wanted to do something a little bit different because we had went through that entire process as well, right? So going through that entire process, we decided that it might be interesting to try to flip the model a little bit. I'm hoping you guys can still hear my mic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, you sound good.
Great. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to create a forum that's mainly genre focused. It's what I know the most about anyways. It's been my life for years and years. So we wanted to create a platform that focused mainly on horror, science fiction, true crime and the paranormal, especially because there's a ton of cross pollination there. You know, if you end up going to a convention, a lot of the convention goers, you know, myself included, they'll be able to tell you which paranormal shows they watch or which true crime documentaries they've seen. So there's a ton of that cross pollination. We thought those 4 subjects were really, really good to sort of group together. And we wanted to bring subjects together instead of parsing them out, which seems to be something that the streaming platforms really like doing now. Is you'll pay for one and then they'll go, hey, but wouldn't you like to see AMC plus true crime? Wouldn't you like to see AMC plus paranormal? And then they'll get you for another $4.95, $5.95. And again, remember, all this was done in the beginning under the guise of cutting the cable, right? Cutting the cord, big cable. And now we've got people that are paying $200 for all their streaming platforms, right? So it's pretty crazy. Netflix is not going to ever lower their prices. They're just going to keep on getting higher. Even brands that we feel might cater more to us as fans, and that would be, for example, Shudder. Their prices are getting more expensive. They're raising their prices, and Shudder's model now, because they're owned by, you know, another global giant. AMC's pushing all of their AMC Plus.
Yep. We lost him. Well, hopefully he'll call us right back. But that's a great subject right there, and that's one of the big sticking points right now with the strike, which is what I want to bring up with him, is because of these streaming platforms, and there's so many of them now, and they're just not reporting. They're not showing the things. As an indie filmmaker, I belong to several different groups that are out there talking about it, trying to find distributors, because it just seems like, I mean, for the most part, I hate to say this, especially if we have any distributor friends that are watching, but most of them are crooks. They're not showing their books. They're not explaining what's going on. So you're putting your movie out there in good faith so people can see it, because part of, you know, being an independent filmmaker is not just you want to make money, because money creates opportunity to create more films, but also you want people to see your movie. You want eyes on it.
Exactly.
You
had a vision, and you want to put that vision and that passion onto film, and you do this so people, you know, you're supplying entertainment. I mean, that's the bottom line of it. Now, of course, you have to bring in, you would like to bring in something to fund another project, especially if you have something. For instance, we had, you know, Jamie Hill on last week, Skinamarink, who put very little in, and worldwide in the 2 million mark. And there goes, and then there was one. I'm not sure. So, you know, yes, you can put very little money into these things, into these projects, make them look, I believe, Ash mentioned, you know, make it look like, you know, you'll put little in, a lot out. And here comes Rotting. Oh, welcome back.
What happened there? All of a sudden, it just went blank on me. But hey, I'm back. But yeah, I heard a lot of what you were saying, and you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. And then there was one.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping he's gonna. Maybe you could message him while we're talking about this. But that is one of the other things too. I mean, it like you mentioned, Skinamarink, okay? That was a worldwide phenomenon. I can't remember the exact budget for that one. I think it was around like 15 grand or 10 grand or something like that to make it. And then it got picked up by a distributor, got the theatrical release, and I believe, and streaming, and it made over 10 million. Now, how much of that 10 million the filmmakers make, that's what's up for debate. But the bottom line for them is that movie's been seen. Their names are out there. So it's going to be easier for them to raise more money for another film, even if they didn't make money on this one, because they've got name recognition. They've got value out there. That's kind of what people like look at Terrifier. I'm a big fan of the Terrifier film. I love those guys. I've worked with them. I've with my Indie Horror Junkie magazine. They made, and I may get the numbers a little wrong, but my understanding is they made the first Terrifier for about 10 grand, something like that. And the movie made 10 million. So of course they got an opportunity.
Incredible.
Yeah, they did an opportunity to make Terrifier 2, which they did, and their budget was a lot higher for that. I think Terrifier 2's budget was a quarter mil, 250 grand. Okay,
Mhm.
which is a significant jump from the 10 grand of the first one.
It
But
certainly is.
they got it because the movie made money, because there's a want for it, because they've got name recognition, because they've got a character now that's out there in the ether that everybody knows about. So they got that opportunity to make a bigger budget film, which they did. They made it for 250 grand, and the movie made close to 25 million out there. So now they're talking about actually having a $5 million part 3. So obviously, to get that kind of budget is because they've got name recognition. So as a filmmaker, you do want to make your money back. And I think that Ash was absolutely right. I think the sweet spot is probably between 8 and 15 grand. Normally between 5 and 10 grand is what I'm always shooting for. But if you could make a movie like for that amount of money that looks like a much bigger budget than what it really is, and has a good quality story and effects and acting and everything else, you should be able to make that money back and then some. But the main thing is you get the opportunity to make more, because name recognition. Because if you get it with the right streaming services, the right distributor, it'll get out there, it'll get seen, it'll get word of mouth. And that's what's going to help you when you go to the next investor saying, hey, I've got a new idea. I'm the maker or the writer director of this movie here, which you've probably seen. It's going to be a lot easier to bring that money home, because that investor is going to know that this guy turns that money around.
Exactly.
He's not just some Joe Bob or whatever it is with his hand out looking to make a movie and may never get nothing done. This is a guy that actually will get something done. It'll get out there and get seen. And even if they don't make their money back, the main thing is the recognition. The fact that they've got their name on a movie that's out there, and that's what people want.
Exactly. Yeah. The fact that, once you get to that, level where you've made something, you've made, a little bit of money off of a previous project.
Right.
And seeing, we see a lot today in the indie horror community and the Kickstarters and Indiegogos, which was one of the notes I wrote down because I wanted to ask him about that and his opinions about that, which he said his whole system shut down. He messaged me, his whole system shut down. So I told him, well, you have the link. So, join us back, if you can. So we'll patiently wait for him, and we'll hold the fort down for you, my friend.
Absolutely.
But once you get something that people say, hey, it's on that name. You mentioned John Carpenter. Oh, it's directed by John Carpenter. Well, it's probably going to be a pretty good film because of his
name recognition,
his name recognition,
body of work.
And that's basically, I think, like the end goal with a lot of young filmmakers is you need that name recognition. And there's a lot of other little, intricate parts that go, into that. Getting something that, is certainly going to appeal to enough people that you can do well. And then you have the filmmaking process of it. And he hit the nail on the head. I'm sitting here listening to him, and I'm like, oh my goodness, why would anybody want to do this to themselves, and make a film? I mean, because there's so many, at times, so many hoops you got to jump through.
There are, and I'll admit it, when you listen to stuff like that, like what he's saying, which is reality, and I hear it all the time, they talk about the minimum guarantee. A lot of people say that minimum guarantee is what you want to go after, because that may very well be the only money you're going to see. Because what happens is once that distributor gets a hold of your film, they've got it locked up for anywhere from 3 to 5 years. Okay, then they're going to put it out there. You're not even 100% sure of where it's going to go, when it's going to go, or anything like that. But the bottom line is, if you're going to sit around and wait for those residual checks, well, you're going to be very disappointed, because if you do get any, a lot of time you're pretty much just going to get a statement. All the stories that I hear on all these groups is that all we're doing is getting statements. Oh, your movie played here, 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 and here. We got X amount of views here. Here's what what it was what the movie brought back in, but then we take out our expenses, we take out our marketing expenses and everything else that we did to get your movie into these different places and into these different people's hands. And basically you've broken even. So that's the thing right now. And I think a lot of filmmakers that was kind of what Krista was talking about when we had Krista on here. Krista's been through this process. Krista knows what happens, and she's been through it. She's had it happen to her. So she's trying to educate people. You need to be more than just a writer, director, producer. Now you've got to really get into the whole streaming situation. You've got to really get into the whole distribution. You got to be able to look at your contracts, understand what you're looking for, and go after the right people and try and get your, because it's really a crapshoot. But the more you know, the more you educate yourself, being an all-around filmmaker, the better chances your film has of not just making money, but of getting seen and getting that name recognition that we all yearn to have. But as a filmmaker, the other thing too, like I've told you before, is that film's going to outlive us. So to me, when you're a creative person and you want to get in this business, as hard as it may be, it's just being able to put something out there that that 20 years from now, after you're gone or whatever the case is, that movie's still going to be around. It's still going to be watched by generations, whether it's your grandkids, your great grandkids, or anything like that. But that's going to have your name on it, and your vision is still out there. So it's kind of a way to immortalize yourself. And hey, welcome back, Ash.
I'm just going to chalk this up to, I started talking about big distribution money.
I swear, I was thinking the same thing, man.
Yep.
My entire system shuts down out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
More than just a little suspicious.
I know. Right? That's I get a couple comments while you're back, get you back set up. Couple comments here. Molly Zombie did her first extra in an indie movie this week and loved it. She is hooked, she says.
Fantastic.
Riggy says that is the goal with Scareplex too, getting, when we were talking about the face recognition with young filmmakers, getting the visibility to those independent creators. This is Chris Passanant. I'm butchering your last name. I'll just call you Chris. He is agreeing with you. And yes, we have to be quick on our feet. Chris, love how fluid it is. You lose your guess and quickly, smoothly pick back up. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
That's what. Oh yeah, Ricky says they shut you down, man. They shut you down.
But Ash, that was one of the things I was just mentioning to Otis that I really want to find out with you. First off, tell me what it is that Scareplex would offer. I'm an independent filmmaker. I've got a movie just made. I'm all jacked up about it, ready to go. What are you guys going to be able to offer me?
Well, the first thing is that there's no exclusivity unless you want it.
Yeah.
So instead of one service picking you up and going, "Hey, we've got you for 2 years," which that's a lot of distribution. We've got you for 2 to 5 years. You come in, you're with us a week. You don't like the results, you can leave. So our contracts are non-exclusive. You set the price for VOD and digital purchase. We don't do that. That was something else that I saw, that suddenly my movie was on sale and had no idea. I wasn't even given the tools to promote it. So it wasn't even a situation where I could say, "Oh, hey, listen, if you haven't seen this yet, now's your opportunity."
Right.
We weren't even given the ability to do that. So yeah, it's very strange, but that is something that tends to happen. It's just a lack of communication. It's a lack of communication, but being very much bound by these contracts.
Right.
So you can't do much about it. You can appeal to your distribution and you can say, "Hey, I would really like for us to have a relationship where you can tell me when things are dropping, when I can promote, how I can promote." And that's something that, we want total transparency from. We want to be able to tell people, "Hey, here's pretty much how we're doing it. Here's how we want to do it." So if you want a $1.99 rental, that's fine. It'll be $1.99. And furthermore, we're not going to take 50%. It's 80 over 20 in favor of the creator. So you keep 80% of everything. The only thing that we're really making money on is the memberships. However, we want to roll all of that membership money to funding films, both our films and other people's films. So even the money that we would be getting, we really, really want to bankroll that into creator-owned projects. So out of the starting gate, if you don't have a distributor, we'll take a look at it. You don't have to have a solicited product, and we're not going to look at it differently if it doesn't have distribution. So if you come to us and say, hey, I don't have a distributor, I would, however, really, really like to have you guys, carry it on, your streaming platform. Great. Then you're not paying 50% for your distributor, and you're setting the price. You're setting our arrangement and our agreements, but we are giving you a place to promote. We're giving you a place to call home, even if it's only for 30 days. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to show people there's room. There's room for everyone to promote their products. There's room for everyone to actually get excited about something for a change. And there's room to make money. If you're wanting to make money because you got a payback, your producers want to make money because you want to make another film, you want to make money, it's because you want to make money. But we don't really care why you want to make money. That money's yours for the most part, which is why we want to do that 80/20 model. Because we don't need to make $248 million to pay our CEO.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, was the actual 2022 salary of the guy who headed up Warner Discovery.
Wow.
$248 million. That was base. So at $248 million, how many of us think he probably got a $20 million bonus?
Oh, easy.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
So we've got people who are, and this is where, like, it's sort of okay to be very conspiratorial, because for the most part, what kind of a person needs $248 million? What in the world are you buying? What kind are you buying? People? I almost have to think like it's the most dangerous game. They're just setting people loose in their backyard, paying them $1 million. They're hunting them at will. That's got to be the only way they're spending that kind of money. I personally, the idea of $248 million is something that I can't really fathom. I don't come from money. I come from a very humble background. So for me, I want to make enough money to pay my bills, pay my car insurance, do whatever I need to do, and then bankroll the rest of that into making movies. That's what I want to do. And I don't see that changing, because that's what I love to do. That's where my heart is at. So somebody wants to come to Scareplex. Okay. Do we charge subscription? Yes, of course we do. It's $3.95, which is cheaper than Screenbox. It's also cheaper than Shudder. People are going to say, yeah, but Screenbox has a lot of movies. Screenbox has 400 titles. We're coming out with 300. We've already got 300. So we've already got 300 titles, and we're $1 less. We're not going anywhere. We're not changing our prices anytime soon. And we keep adding titles. We've not only got a ton of older titles from the 80s, the 70s, all the way back to the turn of the century. We've got some great black and white stuff. And we've got a ton of stuff from the 90s, the 2000s. And now, as of October 13th, we're going to have our first Scareplex original. So we're having films on there starting next month that are only on Scareplex.
Nice.
And that is the creators choosing.
Mm-hmm.
If 10 days later they say, hey, we've had a great 10-day run with you guys, but now we're hitting these other streaming places, fantastic. I feel like there's enough creator-owned content and there's enough money out there that there's room for everybody. That's my feeling. I don't want to be competitive. I think there's room for everyone.
Now,
$240 being paid to one person, there's a lot of room.
Right. And that's, from my understanding, that's only half of what the guy from Disney makes. So
again, to me, it's difficult for me to fathom.
Yeah,
it is. It's difficult for me as just a regular blue collar guy to fathom what in the world would warrant getting 240. This is another show entirely.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I'm like, is he personally feeding like third world countries?
No.
Does he wake up in the morning and they bust him out to some place, in the most barren part of the lower Sudan, and he's in a soup kitchen and he's giving people food, and they're like, that's $250 million worth. No, he's not doing that. I think he's probably golfing for half the day, and then he finally gets into a boardroom where a bunch of
Yeah.
people are making decisions for him. He does a lot of nodding, and then he signs off on some shit. And that
Busy
might
day,
be
man.
me being it might be me being really cynical, but I don't think I'm far off the mark. I
No,
really
you're
don't.
probably not. Let me ask you
I
this:
don't believe so.
How are you doing
So yeah, I'm a
subscriber-wise?
little bitter.
How
Huh?
long have you guys been up and running with Scareplex?
We've been a soft launch for about 4 weeks.
4 weeks, okay.
So we're very, very new. Yeah.
Now, is the only way to access it through currently right now the internet, or do you guys have apps? Are you guys on Roku? Anything like that?
So what we have right now is we have the website. We do have an Android app that is available in the Google Play Store. And I'm going to openly speak out about Apple right now. Yes, you can actually get the app on Apple. We are not putting it in the Apple Store. And the reason we're not doing that is because Apple takes 30% of all profits off the top if you have any kind of subscription model for your app.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Again, how do we make money, right?
Mhm.
When we're faced with odds like that, how do we make money? So what we've done is, if you're on your phone, if you're on an iPhone or an iPad and you're on Safari, go to www.scareplex.com and we will show you how to circumvent the Apple Store, and it's completely legal.
Nice.
Interesting.
So that's how we're doing that, because I'm not going to pay 30% of my profits just so that I can be visible on one platform.
Oh no, absolutely. That's just ridiculous. Chris again says filmmakers need to factor in support infrastructure with their business plan as well as actual production. Self-distribution is an option and should be strongly considered. Set up an independent film production company under an LLC as well as a distribution company. Give yourself some leverage. I see you
And
shaking your
he's
head. So yeah, so you're agreeing with that. Yeah.
Yeah. What are
he's
your thoughts?
absolutely right.
Because another thing that a lot of people are talking about, because one of the groups that I'm part of, they're basically trying to help people with distributors and some of the horror stories and stuff out there. But one of the things that a lot of people are talking about is Film Hub. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with them and that model and everything?
Yeah, and I think that if there's any way to go, that still borders on traditional model, Film Hub's the way to go. Film Hub is definitely the way to go. I think we're still faced with the same issues, though. We're still faced with the issues of the amount that streaming platforms take.
Yeah.
And that's a model that Film Hub can't combat. They
Yeah.
just can't do it. What they can combat is they can combat how much they take on their end.
Right.
And I have to hand it to them. When most distributors are taking 50, 60%, Film Hub is only taking 20. That's fantastic. Now, Film Hub, however, I mean, I have heard there's not a lot of support really for the filmmaker sort of once it's uploaded. But then again, there's not a lot of support for traditional distribution either. So I can't
That's
really
true.
fault that. I won't really put numbers out there, but I will say, when I was being courted by several distributors, the one that we very seriously considered, I will not say whether we went with them or not, said that we were going to get injected into our deal anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 worth of marketing. Right. I'm just going to let a lot of independent filmmakers know this right off the bat. That's a lie. They don't. You have got to get a really good deal with a really reliable distributor for that to happen. They're going to tell you that. And this is something like, if we've got, by the way, if we've got filmmakers coming and going and commenting on stuff, honestly, there's an overwhelming amount that I have talked to alone that were told they were going to give X amount for marketing, and they didn't see anything. We're talking they saw maybe 1 or 2 Facebook posts. Now, however, the problem being is that the distributor that I ended up going with, by the way, kind of forgot that I also own a really large horror site that gets news from every single outlet. So at some point, I was going to start rubbing my temple and going, I should be seeing a press release about my movie from my distributor. And I didn't. I never got a single press release about my own movie. Owning a horror-based website.
Wow.
And one of our affiliates and one of our producers is also associated with a major horror website, and he never saw anything from them either. So, it's like, sorry if they're sort of watching. There's anybody who is affiliated watching this, because that should not happen.
No, it shouldn't.
Exactly.
That is a situation where, and I really hope I didn't like hijack the horror thing here, guys. I really hope I don't do that. But I feel like there's more money to be made by a distributor actually promoting their product. So, a really short analogy, really short story, is that a friend of mine who's another director who's had just a fantastic movie that just launched, is getting a lot of press on it, has had the same pains with his distributor, right? So he had talked to a guy that used to work for a major distribution company and then quit. And he asked the guy why this stuff happens so often, why movies are underrepresented, why filmmakers get paid so little, why minimum purchase guarantees often are leveraged against marketing before anyone actually sees a check. And this insider that he knew replied with, and I quote, "It's just too easy not to do it." So that's the mentality that we're up against as creators and as indie filmmakers, is that we are the people that are supposed to represent us, the people that are supposed to take us, and they're supposed to elevate our project, are fucking us, and for no other reason than, and I quote, "It's just too easy not to." And that's sad.
Yeah, basically, because we can. And yeah, it's just too easy. That is nuts.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about this all day, and that's what we try to do on the podcast here. It's the magazine is pretty much just to try and promote projects and whether it be films or music and this and that. The podcast, we try to bring on special guests each week that try to help us talk about certain other aspects, whether it be filmmaking, whether it be distribution, whether it be the creation process, whatever. But we want to try to educate as much as we can. And as a indie filmmaker myself, I'm, completely entertained by everything we've talked about today, and really appreciate everything you've brought to the table for us.
Thank you. And I appreciate the forum. Obviously,
Absolutely.
it is something I would like to think that visibly people can see that I'm very passionate about. So
Yeah.
being able to talk about it is a great thing for me. So thank you.
And you've had a lot of
Yeah.
good comments and stuff like that as well. So I think people are tuning in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think everybody has been taking notes. Sometimes, it can't be all fun and games. Yes, it's fun and games when you have a premiere for your movie and then this and that, but there are some hurdles, and there are some shady people out there that are doing it just because they can. It's too easy not to screw these people who are out there. A lot of them like us, 9 to 5s, and still have their project and just trying to live out a passion and put that passion on film. And these guys are like, go F yourself, get out of here.
They don't need those extra quarters.
No, right? Yeah, they
Right.
don't need them extra
Yeah.
quarter.
Yeah,
do
yeah,
you, Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say that, it luckily it doesn't deter us so much, because I think filmmaking is a very compulsory activity. So we're still going to keep doing what we do, but I do feel as though there is a movement that is pushing for more transparency. I think
Mhm.
especially when we have stuff happen on a bigger scale, like the current strikes, I
Right.
think it's and what we do as indie filmmakers is just a microcosm of that. It really is.
Mhm.
We have the you know we're ailing from the same positions and scenarios and situations, but I do believe that the more people talk about it, and it's difficult because indie filmmakers were still under this weird sort of cloud where it's like we need the distributor, we need them. We're still under that cloud of it because it's been that way for so long
Mhm.
that a lot of people don't really want to come forward and name names. A lot of people don't want to talk about what actually happened to them. But I think that we are seeing that flip
Yeah.
because what do we have to lose? It's not money. I'll tell
Mhm.
you
That's
that.
true.
Like
That's
I'm
true.
not suddenly going to get less for my distributor because I went on this podcast. So yeah.
Right. Well, once
Exactly.
again, we really want to thank you for joining us, Ash. It's been, like I said, we could talk here for all day long, and obviously the people that are chiming in are appreciated as well. And the good thing with this is that now that this podcast, when it's about to end, it'll be on our YouTube channel, it'll be on our Facebook page, so people can freely go back there, and hopefully a lot of them will look you up like I'm going to. So I really, really appreciate your time.
Fantastic. I thank you so much. Can I just mention one thing real quick?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, so anybody who does want to watch Holes in the Sky, by all means, we are on Amazon, we are on Vudu, we are on Redbox, we are on Tubi, we are on Plex, we're on a few other platforms, Freevee, a few other platforms. Um, we are currently in post production on our anthology series Eft, which hopefully will be coming out in spring or summer. We're real close to getting a lock on that. So we've got that coming up, and that's with 4 other horror directors. So it's myself directing one segment, 4 other horror directors directing the other segment.
Right.
So we've got a lot going on. Hopefully, that we will also be able to bring the audience a new film. So
Outstanding.
I actually had that film written down. I got in my notes in production. F the Tales from the End Times. I had it written down, so I'm glad you brought that up. And again, just to reiterate what Rick said, thank you so much for your time, man. And had a little hiccup, but we kept it going. You got back with us, and again, yes, I would highly suggest going and checking out Holes in the Sky, man. It's a really cool film. I'm a fan of found footage and the mockumentary type. I had to go look it up. Is this true? I seriously was googling it the
well,
first time that I watched.
that's the best review that I can get. The best review that I
I,
can get is that. So thank you.
because yeah, it literally had me googling to make sure that whether or not this was real. But thank you again, Ash. And hey, as things go on, man, we love to maybe have you back on if you got some projects coming up. Give us a little update. And hey, with that, man, you have a wonderful night, man.
Take care,
Thank you
my
so
brother.
much. It was a pleasure, guys.
Take care.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I could have talked to him all night long. That was a great
Oh my
conversation.
goodness, a wealth of information. I have my pen and my paper here, and I don't think I took one note because I'm just trying to soak it all in. I'll have to go
Mhm.
back and rewatch this.
We're gonna rewatch our own podcast.
We have to take
Absolutely.
notes. I was too involved
Yeah.
when it was going on. We have a few little parting
Mhm.
statements, I guess you could say, that we're going to make.
Mhm.
And one would be our guest next week.
Mhm.
And as I go to the awesome indiehorrorjunkie.com, this tells me we're going to have Monique, and I'm not, how do you pronounce her last name? I don't want to
Sh-
screw it up.
Shelley Stokes.
Shelly Stokes, and there's Monique.
Gugino.
Eugenio, okay, and Shelly Stokes.
Mhm.
And they are from Wicked Window Productions,
Mhm.
Shock Reel Cinema Film Festival. Another awesome talk about indie horror. And
Mhm.
we also have a you wanted to you had some you wanted to mention about
Yep,
Yeah.
there's another film being filmed right now. It's by the Greasy Boys production company. Our own Amy Rolfson is over there. She's the producer and she's the star of this film. It's called The Inn. These guys are old school horror fans and special makeup effects, maestros. I mean, some of the stuff that I've already seen, they sent me some exclusive stuff that's just for my eyes only. They told me that looks so good. It's basically an 80s throwback slasher type film, and it's filming right now in Dunedin. And when I get back home, I'm in California right now. When I get back home over the weekend next week, I'm supposed to be going over there and filming a cameo in the film. So definitely look out for it. It's a movie called The Inn. You can look it up online. You can go to Indie Horror Junkie. We put the poster in the magazine right there. Look at that beautiful poster. So definitely check it out. But
it just screams 80s slasher to
doesn't
me.
it though? And that tugs at my heartstrings. So absolutely. So keep an eye out for this one for sure.
And also, don't forget there's all of our links down there. Go over there, sub on our YouTube account, follow us on Facebook, get all the feed your need is basically what I'm trying to say here.
Mm-hmm.
You got to feed the need with the Indie Horror Junkie podcast, the magazine, the website, your one-stop shop. That's all I got. What do you got, Rick?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us again. And thank you, Otis, for another fabulous hosting job. It was a great show. Looking forward to next week. And I guess we can end with
Hey, see
we'll
you
see you next Wednesday.